AITA for refusing my partner's family birthday? When Daniel's sister called last week to invite me to his birthday gathering, I froze. Her voice was cheerful, warm even, but I felt my stomach twist. On the surface, it sounded simple, just a casual dinner at his parents' house with his siblings, cousins, and a cake at the end. But for me, it wasn't simple at all. The truth is, I don't feel welcome with his family. I don't feel safe with them. During the hardest season of my life, when Daniel and I were separated, I reached out to them more than once. I was scared, overwhelmed, and raising two little girls almost entirely on my own. I dialed their numbers, left messages, even sent texts begging for some kind of support. Not one of them picked up. Not one of them even replied with a few words of comfort. It was as if I had vanished from their world. I remember one night in particular. I had just put the girls to bed, and I was sitting on the kitchen floor crying so hard I could barely breathe. I picked up my phone, desperate for someone, anyone, to tell me I wasn't alone. I called his mother. She didn't answer. I called his sister, straight to voicemail. His cousin read my message, but never replied. That silence was so loud, it broke something inside me. Now, months later, Daniel insists they've been asking about me. He says they want to see me, that they've been wondering how I'm doing. He says it's a chance to start fresh. But I can't erase the memory of how quickly they turned away when things fell apart. To them, I wasn't family then. So why should I pretend I am now? Daniel believes my hesitation is about punishing him, but it isn't. He doesn't understand. It's about trust. It's about knowing who will stand by you when you're drowning and who will watch from the shore. And I already know where they stand. If things ever went wrong again, I know they would turn away from me just as quickly as they did before. That knowledge sits heavy on my chest, like a weight I can't shake. I told him the truth. I don't want a fake relationship. I don't want to sit at a dinner table and smile politely at people who once treated me like I didn't exist. My girls are still so young, 4 and 1, and I can't risk pulling them into relationships that feel hollow and uncertain. I can't teach them that love is something that disappears when life gets complicated. Daniel didn't take that well. He told me I was being unfair, that I was holding on to grudges and keeping his family at a distance for no reason. He said it would mean a lot to him if I came, that it would show we're moving forward. I asked him, moving forward for who? For you? For them? Or for me? He didn't answer. He just stood there looking at me like I was the problem, like I was the one keeping the wounds open instead of acknowledging that they never even tried to heal them in the first place. The argument didn't stop there. That night, after the girls went to bed, it turned into a long fight. Daniel accused me of wanting to punish not just his family, but him too. He said it feels like I'm embarrassed to be seen with him, that I want to make him look bad in front of his own parents. His voice was frustrated, almost pleading. I told him again, this isn't about punishing anyone. This is about protecting myself, protecting my daughters, protecting the small bit of peace I've managed to rebuild after months of feeling abandoned. He said, but they're my family. Whether you like them or not, they're still my family, and I need you to be part of that. I said, then where were they when I needed them most? Where was that family when I was crying on the kitchen floor, alone with 2 kids and no one to lean on? The room went silent after that. I could see in his face that he didn't know how to answer. He looked hurt, but I was hurt too. And my hurt didn't vanish just because he wanted everything to look normal again. Now, as the dinner gets closer, the tension between us only grows. He keeps bringing it up, saying things like, you'll see, it won't be as bad as you think, or if you keep avoiding them, they'll never understand your side. He even said yesterday that if I skip the dinner, it will feel like I'm choosing to isolate myself on purpose, that I'm building walls I don't need. But how can I explain to him that those walls aren't something I built by choice? There's something his family forced me to build when they turned their backs on me. I don't know how to make him see that sitting at that table would feel like betraying myself. I can't laugh with people who pretended I didn't exist. I can't toast to his birthday while remembering how they ignored me when I begged for support. I want peace. I want things to be easier. The dinner happened last night, and I stayed home with the girls. I spent most of the evening on the floor with them, building towers out of blocks, feeding them snacks, and pretending I wasn't thinking about the empty chair that had my name on it across town. I tried to push the thought out of my mind, but every time I glanced at the clock, I imagined them all sitting together, eating, laughing, pretending like everything was fine while I was here alone. When Daniel came home, I could tell immediately that something had shifted. He didn't walk in with a smile, not even with relief. He looked drained, his shoulders slumped, his face pale, his voice flat. I asked him how it went, and at first, he gave short answers. It was fine. Dinner was good. They asked about you. But then, slowly, the details began to spill out. His mother had asked where I was, and Daniel told her I wasn't comfortable being there. Apparently, she went quiet for a moment, gave him a small nod, and simply said, I understand. But it didn't end there. His sister, Laura, jumped in almost immediately, accusing him of letting me control the situation. She told him that if I really cared about the family, I would have made the effort to show up for just one evening. According to Daniel, the room went tense. His father stayed silent. His mother looked uncomfortable, but Laura wouldn't stop. She kept saying things like, she can't keep hiding from us forever, and at some point, she has to choose whether she's part of this family or not. Hearing this made my chest ache. Even in my absence, I was still the center of their criticism. I wasn't there to defend myself, yet my loyalty was being questioned like it was some kind of test I had failed. Later that night, after the girls were asleep, I received a message on my phone. It was from Emily, one of Daniel's cousins. It was long, carefully written. She said she was sorry for the silence in the past, that she honestly didn't know how to handle the situation when everything fell apart, and she regretted keeping her distance. She admitted that she had read some of my old texts and never answered because she felt helpless. She said she wished she had done more. Then she asked if I would be open to meeting her for coffee, just the two of us. Reading that message left me shaken. On one hand, it was the first time anyone in his family had acknowledged that their silence hurt me. It wasn't an excuse, it was an admission. But on the other hand, I wasn't sure if I could let myself believe her. Part of me wondered if this was just guilt talking, or worse, a way to ease me back toward the family without anyone truly taking responsibility for what had happened. When I showed Daniel the message, his face lit up in a way that surprised me. He looked hopeful, almost relieved. "See," he said, his voice lighter than it had been all night. "This could be the start of things getting better." But his excitement only made me feel more conflicted. I didn't answer him right away. Instead, I just stared at the phone, rereading Emily's words again and again. The truth was, I didn't know if I wanted things to get better with his family. Part of me wanted closure, yes, but another part of me feared that opening that door would just leave me vulnerable again if the rest of them still saw me as an outsider. When I didn't respond, Daniel grew frustrated. He told me I was being stubborn, that I always assumed the worst of his family. He raised his voice, saying, "You can't hold on to this forever. At some point, you have to meet them halfway." That stung. I turned to him and said, "Halfway? Daniel, I begged them for help when I was drowning. I called, I texted, I reached out, and all I got was silence. Where was halfway then?" He didn't answer. He just rubbed his face with his hands, like he didn't know what else to say. And that silence between us felt as heavy as the silence from his family months ago. The fight went on for over an hour. I accused him of not understanding what it felt like to be abandoned. He accused me of holding on to bitterness that would eventually poison our marriage. He said he wanted his family and me to coexist, to find some way of being in the same room without this wall of resentment. I told him I didn't build the wall, they did. And if they wanted it gone, they had to be the ones to break it down. By the time we stopped arguing, it was late and we were both exhausted. I went to bed still holding my phone, Emily's message glowing on the screen like a question I wasn't ready to answer. This morning, I finally replied. I told her I needed time to think, that I wasn't ready to sit across from her and pretend everything was okay, but that I appreciated her reaching out. And for the first time in months, I felt like the decision was truly mine to make. It didn't solve anything with Daniel. It didn't erase the hurt, but it reminded me that I still had a choice. And right now, that choice is the only thing keeping me steady.
You are not the AITA. Guarding your peace after being abandoned isn't cruelty, it's clarity. My insight: betrayal hardens memory, and trust can't be microwaved back to life just because a cake is sliced. Suggestion: move at your own pace, not on a schedule. Daniel's relatives said. Humor angle: if family loyalty were a coupon, there's definitely expired during the crisis, and no amount of redeeming will bring it back without some serious restocking. Before we jump into the next story, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let us know your favorite part in the comments.
AITA for calling my mom self-centered after she locked me out. I'm 17, and I live with my mom, Marlene, who's 53. We've shared this cramped apartment in the middle of town for as long as I can remember. It's just the two of us. My room is small, with posters taped to the walls, a desk full of notebooks, and a bed I've tried to make cozy over the years. My mom's side of the apartment is just as cluttered, with bills, half-finished knitting projects, and stacks of newspapers that never seem to move. I'm trying to finish my last year of school, trying to keep up with assignments, extracurriculars, and friends, while also trying to survive at home. Our life together is complicated, but I've learned to navigate it, until recently, when the tension between us started spilling into chaos I couldn't control. The other afternoon, I had a friend over, Jamie, someone I've known since middle school. My last class ended early, around 1:15, and we were sitting on my bed, talking about silly things, laughing at inside jokes, and planning a project we had for school. It was calm. I felt normal. I felt safe. Then, without knocking, my mom appeared at the doorway. Her face was tight, her eyes wide, her mouth a thin line. I froze. "Why are you home so early?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I've told you," I said, trying to keep my tone even. "My classes end early this semester. I've been home at this time for months. Nothing's changed." She stared at me for what felt like minutes, just breathing heavily. Then she turned and left. I thought it was over. My heart was still racing, but I tried to calm down, thinking maybe she was just having a bad day. An hour later, after Jamie had gone home, I went to the kitchen to grab a drink. My mom was standing there, still, her hands pressed against the counter. Her face looked like it was carved from stone, her eyes dark. "What's wrong?" I asked. At first, she didn't respond. Then suddenly, she exploded. She shouted that she had been in terrible pain all day while I was sitting in my room, ignoring her. Her voice cracked as she clutched her stomach. "It's my appendix," she yelled. "I think it's my appendix. We need to go to the hospital." I felt panic rise in my chest. I didn't know what to do. I had never seen her like this. I grabbed her keys, got the car ready, and drove with shaking hands, feeling a mix of fear, anger, and confusion. At the hospital, everything shifted. She walked through the doors and suddenly seemed calmer, almost normal. The doctors examined her and said there was nothing wrong, nothing at all. I sat in the waiting room, my legs trembling. I couldn't understand it. How could she scream, clutch her stomach, cry, and act like she was dying? And now everything was fine. On the drive home, I tried to speak. "Mom, why did you scream at me? Why did you throw that fruit at the wall before we left?" The doctors said nothing is wrong. I don't understand. She waved me off. I thought I was sick. That's not my fault. Her voice was defensive, but there was no acknowledgement of the fear she caused me. No apology for yelling or for throwing things. I felt small. I felt invisible. By the time we got home, it was nearly 11 at night. I was exhausted, emotionally drained. She told me to go to the shop across the street to buy painkillers. I went. The store was closed. When I returned, the front door was locked. I knocked, called her name. Nothing. I banged on the door, tears streaming down my face, but she refused to open it. Through the small gap in the door, she told me to go sleep at a friend's house. Then she started saying things I didn't even understand, accusations that made me blush and shrink in embarrassment, things about my friendships, about what I supposedly do when I have friends over. I had nothing with me but my phone, and I left, crying, shaking, and humiliated. That night, I tried calling her. I texted. I begged. Nothing. My phone rang endlessly, but she ignored it. The next morning, I couldn't go to school because we share one car, and she had taken it. My anxiety spiked. I didn't know how I would manage the day. Then, thankfully, a friend from school, Alex, came to pick me up from the parking lot. He offered for me to stay at his place. I was grateful, but I knew I couldn't live there forever. The worst part was my medication. I take it for anxiety and mood swings to keep myself steady. Without it, I spiral. I texted my mom, telling her she could keep all my clothes, my makeup, everything in my room. Just please hand me my medication. She refused. No explanation. Nothing. I lost my temper. I called her selfish. I told her she only thinks of herself. And then she blocked me. I felt trapped. I felt desperate. I couldn't pretend nothing happened. I couldn't return home. I couldn't go to school. And my mental health felt like it was tipping over the edge. That day, I stayed at Alex's, staring at the ceiling, my hands shaking, my mind spinning with questions. Would she ever let me back? Did she even care what she had done? Could I forgive her if she did? My phone vibrated with a notification. Another blocked call. I pressed it, but nothing happened. I screamed into my pillow. I started thinking about my future. I'm 17. I'm supposed to be finishing school, making friends, thinking about college. Instead, I was thinking about who would let me in the front door, who would hand me medication, who could I trust to even care that I existed. I felt rage, helplessness, and fear all at once. I tried calling my aunt, my older cousin, anyone who might understand, but even reaching out to them felt like admitting defeat. I didn't want anyone to see how powerless I felt. Hours passed. I sat there, rocking back and forth, my thoughts spiraling. I remembered moments from the past few months, little things I had ignored, the slammed doors, the silent treatments, the way my mom's anger had exploded for no reason. And now it had culminated in this, locked out, scared, and alone. I didn't sleep that night. I just stared at my phone, hoping for some sign of life, some crack in the wall of silence. And still, nothing. By morning, my anxiety had doubled. I had to get my medication. I had to eat. I had to go to school. But I had no car, no access to my things, and a mother who had made it clear she didn't care about any of it. I felt like I was walking on a cliff edge, the wind pulling me toward chaos, with no one holding my hand. And in that moment, I realized I couldn't control her. I couldn't force her to understand me. All I could do was try to survive, try to find a way to exist in the middle of the storm without completely breaking. And so I stayed at Alex's, trying to hold myself together, wondering how long I could keep going like this before everything I relied on, school, friendships, my mental stability, crumbled around me. For the first time, I understood what it felt like to have nowhere to call home, even when you're standing in the place you've always always lived. A few days passed with no word from my mom. I tried texting her again from my friend Alex's phone, but still nothing. No reply, no acknowledgement. Each day that went by felt heavier than the last. I couldn't go home, I couldn't get my things, and my schoolwork was piling up. Every morning I woke up with a knot in my stomach, worrying about falling further behind in classes, worrying about missing deadlines, and worrying about my medication. Then something unexpected happened. My aunt, my mom's younger sister, contacted me on Facebook. I was hesitant to respond at first. My aunt and my mom don't always get along, and I hadn't spoken to her in years. But she messaged me gently, asking if I was okay. She said a neighbor had told her I hadn't been home in days, and she was worried. I stared at the message for a long time, unsure if I should tell her everything. But finally, I typed out a long message explaining everything: how I'd been locked out, how I couldn't access my medication, how my mom had yelled at me and thrown things, and how she had blocked me after I confronted her. I pressed send and waited, holding my breath. Her response came quickly. She said she was shocked and horrified, and that she would call my mom immediately. My heart sank. I didn't want my mom to be angry at me even more, but I also knew I couldn't keep going like this. A few hours later, my phone rang. It was my mom. My chest tightened instantly. I hesitated before answering, my hands trembling. Her voice was cold, clipped, and hard. "Why did you tell my sister? You've embarrassed me. You're making me look bad. I needed help," I said quietly, trying to keep my voice calm. "I need my medication, Mom. That's all. I just want my medicine." "You're ungrateful," she snapped. "You're always ungrateful. You think the world owes you everything." Then she hung up. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, feeling my stomach drop. I couldn't understand how asking for something as basic as medication had turned into this. That night, my aunt called again. I could hear her voice trembling over the line. Frustration and concern mingled together. She had gone to my mom's apartment, knocked on the door, and asked for my things. At first, my mom refused to open the door. My aunt said she had argued with her for nearly 20 minutes, begging her to hand over my belongings. Eventually, my mom gave in, handing over a small bag. When I saw it, my heart sank. It was barely enough to survive for a few days. 2 t-shirts, a pair of jeans, a hoodie, and some socks. None of my school books, none of my notebooks, none of my personal things, and, of course, no medication. I collapsed into tears. I felt everything at once: anger, despair, fear, and helplessness. My aunt tried to comfort me over the phone, promising she would help me sort this out, but I could hear in her voice that she didn't know exactly how. She couldn't make my mom hand over what I needed. She could only try. Daniel, my friend I'd been staying with, had overheard the phone calls. He looked at me later that evening, worry etched across his face. "You can't keep living like this," he said softly. "We should go to her apartment together. Maybe she'll listen if I'm there too." The thought of facing my mom again made my chest tighten and my stomach churn. I didn't know if I was ready to confront her, to beg, to argue, to face rejection again. But I also knew I couldn't continue without my things, without my medication, without access to anything that allowed me to function. I couldn't keep borrowing clothes, living out of a bag, worrying that I'd fall apart at school because I didn't have what I needed. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling in Daniel's guest room, my mind racing. I thought about all the fights that had led to this moment: the screaming, the door slamming, the things thrown, the accusations. Every memory came back in sharp detail, and I could feel my chest tighten with each one. The next morning, we prepared to go. Daniel wanted to act calm and collected, but I could barely speak. My fingers shook as I packed a small bag, knowing I was walking straight back into a storm I hadn't weathered successfully before. My aunt had told me to try to stay calm, to just ask for my medication and my essentials, but I knew my mom didn't respond to calm. She only escalated. She only punished. When we reached the apartment, I could see her through the window. She was pacing, arms crossed, muttering to herself. I froze for a moment. My heart raced. Daniel placed a hand on my shoulder. "We'll get through this," he said. I nodded, trying to swallow the lump in my throat. I knocked. My mom appeared in the doorway, her face twisted with anger. "What do you want now?" she barked. I need my medication, Mom," I said quietly. "And my school books, my bag, everything I need for school. That's all. Please." Her eyes narrowed. She stepped aside, but didn't move to hand anything over. "You've caused enough trouble already. You think you can just show up and demand things? You're selfish." Daniel stepped forward. "She's not asking for more than she needs. Just give her what's hers. It's not complicated." My mom's face contorted. "I won't be bullied by my own daughter." She slammed the door. The sound reverberated through the hallway. I felt my chest collapse. I couldn't believe this was happening. I was 17, asking for necessities, and I was being treated like a criminal. I sank to the steps outside, shaking, tears streaming down my face. Daniel knelt beside me, trying to comfort me, but I felt felt numb, disconnected from everything. I didn't know how long we sat there. Minutes felt like hours. The apartment door stayed closed. My aunt called, trying to negotiate again, but my mom refused to answer. I realized in that moment that this wasn't just anger. This wasn't just a fight. This was control. She was punishing me for daring to need her help, for daring to exist outside of her narrative. I had no choice but to keep moving forward, to rely on others, to patch together a life that should have been simple. I couldn't stay on those steps forever. But the image of my mom standing behind that closed door, refusing to see me as anything more than a problem, stayed with me. I felt fear, despair, and rage mixing into a knot that made it hard to breathe. And I knew one thing. The next time I needed something, I couldn't count on her. Not for my belongings, not for my medication, not for anything. For the first time in my life, I truly realized what it felt like to be abandoned in your own home by someone who was supposed to protect you. And that weight pressed down on me as I tried to stand, clutching the tiny bag of clothes I had managed to retrieve, ready to face a world that suddenly seemed colder than it ever had before.
You are not the AITA. That's not rebellion, that's survival. Insight, what you've described isn't normal conflict. It's emotional sabotage, locking doors, withholding medication, fabricating illness to manipulate you. Suggestion, lean hard on safe adults like your aunt, trusted friends, even school staff, because this isn't a battle you can or should fight alone. Humor, if Parent of the Year had auditions, your mom would get cut before the first commercial break. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Got a story to share? Drop it in the comments and let us know which one was your favorite. If you enjoyed this video, you'll definitely want to check out AITA for not letting my sister meet my baby. Click here to watch it now.